welcome, welcome. I'm so glad you joined us as we discuss racial justice approaches to ADHD, health, and wealth. I'm going to pass the mic to one of my co-panelists, Dr. Brandy Walker.
Hey.
And we also have Rick Webster with us today.
We are family, so this conversation today, I want you to think of it more like a talk, okay? And you know how when we talk, we share good information. So in fact, we're going to consider it real talk. Because when you hear the word real talk, you kind of lean in and you're like paying even more attention. And so this conversation, we want you to lean in, pay attention, but be family so that when we leave, we're like on the same sheet of music about how we want to get after some of these initiatives. Does that sound cool? All right. So I'm Brandy. On the streets, they call me Brandor, right? But we're not on the streets, so you can call me Brandy. I am a clinical psychologist, and I've been working with soldiers for like the last 20 years. Clinical psychologist, and I just transitioned from active duty into more of a research kind of position. So fun and exciting things, and maybe I'll get a chance to tell you a little bit about that as we wrap up. But I'm here with the wonderful Rick, the wonderful Don. We're gonna have a great conversation, and yeah.
Okay, yep, I'm Rick Webster, founder of Renify. We teach people about financial literacy to ADHD population and other marginalized populations. That's really my specialty.
All right, hello. I am Dr. Donalisa Fisher. I am a full professor of anthropology in the California State University system, which serves 23 campuses in the state of California. For those that aren't familiar with our system, it's one of the largest public university systems in the United States. I am specifically stationed at San Francisco State University, where I have served over 60 theses and dissertations. I've been analyzing racial equity since 1999, and I have been a professor at my current institution for 16 years. I'm looking at my colleague over here in the audience. I also am a co-founder of the Hip Hop Archive, and you may think, hip hop, what does that have to do with ADHD? One of the things that we'll be delving into, hopefully today, is how we can help people and change policy. And one of the ways that I've utilized my work as a doctor and a person that is an expert of behavior science and someone that helps to educate people from campuses to streets about intersectionality, about racism and neurodiversity is through popular culture. And so some of that will come up today. That was a bit of a thing. So again, Dr. Donalisa Fisher, Dr. Brandy Walker, and Rick Webster. And we're here, yes.
All right, so we're talking about ADHD, health, education, and wealth. And we're talking about a racial or social justice approach.
So education.
Yes, so this is one of Dawn's favorite topics. Also one of mine. I got a story, but you want to get into the topic first, or I can give you all my story, whatever you want. Okay, we'll talk about my story just a little bit.
I hear your story.
Yeah.
All right, so back in the day, I'm just playing, that's not my story. So I have a client that I'm seeing. And my client disclosed to me, he's probably maybe around 26, 27, right? Unemployed, looking for work, living in substandard conditions. So I'm trying to figure out, like, how did you end up there? Like, where's your school education? Okay, I got a high school diploma, but not, they kind of gave it to me, right? So as we talk, this person talks about how they grew up in Baltimore, right? Went through Baltimore school system. And when they were in grammar school, straight A's, 4.0, right? 4.0 GPA. From grammar school, they go into middle school, right? Middle school and grammar school, they have some of the advanced classes. Middle school, same thing, right? All of these advanced AP classes. But in this middle school, 80% black, 20% white, and the 20% that's white are all in the AP classes. So what does that mean? That means the 80% that are black are not. And so while he's in regular classes, he's with his friends and everything, it's not too bad, right? And so he's applying himself as needed. But he has this high intellectual level, right? And so at some point they say, okay, we probably should put you in some AP classes because you really are overachieving, right? Put him in AP classes, and in that environment, he's ridiculed, exposed to racism, discrimination, implicit bias. And it's only him and 2 other black people. And what this student recognizes is like, hey, some of these people don't belong in here. Like I know people in my regular classes that are way smarter than them. They're in this space and they're protected and they have this privilege. And at the same time, not just them, but my teachers are treating me differently. So what happens? The student starts going to class, but now he puts his head down, he doesn't speak up, doesn't get involved, will fight if he needs to, because he's always been taught to stand up for himself. And then the other 2 black people that are in his class, he may speak up for them because they're getting it too. So he may intercede on their behalf when he sees that they're being shamed or ridiculed, but otherwise, head down until he decides to stop coming to school. And so high school doesn't even apply himself, stops going. But they pass him anyway. Now, how successful is that individual going to be? These experiences that our students have in these classroom environments are absolutely critical. And when you take a classroom environment that is not respectful or appreciative, or a teacher who doesn't see you and your worth, when you start experiencing these negative experiences, it feels traumatic, and it changes your mindset about even applying yourself. So this trajectory that we see where all of these people ending up in prison, how does that look for someone who has ADHD who's having these experiences? And we're saying this happened like maybe about 8 to 7 years ago. All of this stuff is recent. So in the educational system, oh my gosh, this is where kids either love school or hate it. But we all know that education is probably one of the #1 predictors of a higher quality of life. Mm-hmm. Over to you, Dawn.
Before you go with that, I think there's a book called Coaching for Equity, which I think should be required for every teacher, because a lot of this is implicit. The teachers aren't evil, they just don't know. They don't know what they're doing. It's an element of white privilege. You get to walk around not knowing that you don't know.
Are you able to hear, Rick, audience? Yeah? Yeah. Okay, I'm deaf hard of hearing, so.
Didn't work?
But the book was called Coaching for Equity?
Coaching for Equity, yeah.
Coaching for Equity. And yeah, there's a lot. We have, for those of you that have our handout, we have a list of peer-reviewed resources at the end. And there's also, I'll try to, I think I can, there's also you don't have to read educational research journals if you don't want to and so forth. I definitely got you on the academic articles and publications and so forth. And there's also a number of books that outline this in accessible terms, and audiobooks and so forth, so that people can get access to the information that they need. At this point, I wanted to shout out Dr. Zoe Smith, who just won an award at this conference, whose research, I see you, Zoe, who's doing, I think I do. Let me not. And yeah, I just think it's important for us to keep learning and doing this together. I know we need to switch on to our last, in our hot topic that gets to wealth and inheritance and so forth.
Yeah.
But it's important to understand that if out the gate, or from the beginning, healthcare is not only not always an option. And when it is, it costs and takes a lot of persistence and advocacy. Then we talk about education, in which many people are excluded, traumatized, whether they know it or not, and sent messages that they don't belong, that somewhere else is the place for them. Yet, what a mixed message from society, because you're truant if you don't go to school. So this builds up to earning power, access to, because we don't just go to school for knowledge and education, right? We can get that even from, in multiple places. We're there for our networks, too, our friendships, our future advocates, people who might be able to refer us to people to help us get help. And if you're cut out from all of that, or there's some obstacle and barrier to getting access to that, then that, again, can have lifelong impact factors that take many of us decades to connect to the resources that we offer here in this room, to find community. But this isn't like, but I can say that I've witnessed radical change on individual levels and then in policy levels. And I'm dealing with large systems in public education, given the state that I worked in for the past 20 years, but even prior to that, Florida, Illinois, Missouri, and even in other countries. Change is possible, but it takes us understanding this and practicing talking about it. Education. I think I'll try to bring it back up later. I don't know. There's a story that some of us grow up with about, I believe it's Charles Drew, but I didn't expect to tell this story about the heart surgeon who died outside of a hospital, a segregated hospital. And so I'm going to try to make this leap to education for a moment, that when educators, coaches, clinicians, and medical professionals, we need to recognize that our attention and our continued education is critical. It's life and death for many people. And that might not just be in a hospital or in a therapy session or in a coaching session, but it might also be taking place in a classroom or any related office. All of our work matters.
Yeah, and just to add a little bit more continuity to the idea of education, we've talked a lot about the school to prison pipeline, right? And nobody goes to school and says, you know what, I think I want to go to jail when I leave here, right? But what happens is, particularly when executive functioning is impaired or compromised, right? So we know with the diagnosis of ADHD, the aspect of us being able to think things through and make good decisions in spite of distractions or the pull for immediate gratification, right? When that's happening in our brain, as a kid, it doesn't, it matters. But when that's not addressed, it just shows up in adulthood for adult type situations. Mm-hmm. So now, you couldn't get me to do my homework, and I didn't feel like doing my chores, but guess what? I can't get a job, right? Or if I can't get a job, I don't know really how to cope with my symptoms. So, I might smoke a J or 2 or 3 or 4 every day. This is how I cope, right? I can get enough money to get enough, marijuana or whatever, right? Because that's light compared to some of the other things that people are dabbling in. But those become the coping strategies, right? We open ourselves up to a lot of accidental type conditions, right? Whether it's driving type accidents with fatal results, or maybe it's just being in a wrong place at the wrong time, hanging with the wrong people, right? But this whole pipeline where we end up with these negative trajectories that end up in the law. It's just a matter of time, right? When things kind of cross the legal line. Too many speeding tickets. Now, I went to Howard University. I will tell you, parking is crazy. I have a photo album of parking tickets and red light violations. I was in court like every other day, like, but wait. They was like, we have you putting on lip gloss. I was like, you sure that's me? But I don't have a diagnosis of ADHD. I just work very closely with the population, right? And my research is here. And I have strong relationships and collaborations, right? Because I feel like we can make a tremendous difference. But in my work, what I see is that even in the military population, it's this trajectory if we're not intentional, right? And getting the resources and the connections that we need. And so for the individual who is dealing with, these challenges in an education environment as a youngster, we got to get them the resources they need. If we can get them 504 plans and IEPs that absolutely are executed by school systems, right? And that execution needs to happen middle school, high school, college, even in an advanced education environment. If they get what they need, they will be great. If they don't get what they need, they lose traction and look for other ways to cope. And if it's not in a healthy way, it's still going to be coping in a way that works for me. Whether I avoid making important decisions and I just don't make them, or if I make important decisions but I make bad ones, they still add up to being negative outcomes.